Harald Hardrada was a renowned Viking warrior, and king of Norway during 11th century. He was known for his military prowess, participating in numerous battles and campaigns throughout his life. His ambitions led him to seek expansion and power, which often brought him to conflict with the other rulers. Harald Hardrada's legacy as a Viking king and warrior made him a legendary figure in history, and his death at Stamford Bridge battle marked the end of Viking Age. Harald was born in 1015 in Norway, to Sigurd Syr and Asta Gudbrandsdatter. He belonged to the royal lineage of the Ungling dynasty. His father Sigurd was a nobleman and the ruler of Ringerike, while his mother Asta came from a prominent family. At that time in Norway, there were power struggles between different ruling families, who were competing for control and influence. These conflicts often led to rivalries, alliances and even battles among the noble families, and during this time Harald's father died in the struggle. It was a pretty intense and chaotic period in Norwegian history. After his father's death, Harald went into exile, seeking refuge in the court of Yaroslav the Wise, the Grand Prince of Kiev. During his time in Kiev, Harald gained valuable experience and skills that would shape him as great Viking warrior, and as king in the future. In Norway, Olaf II, Harald's half-brother, was seeking to consolidate his power and spread Christianity throughout Norway. However, his attempts to conversion and to centralize power faced resistance from the leaders, those who favored the Old Norse traditions. So the conflict has arisen between the Norwegian chiefs and the Olaf II, and the battle ensued. The 15-year-old Harald heard of this and gathered a force of 600 men. After the Battle of Stiklestad, Harald fled Norway, and eventually made his way to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. There he joined the elite Varangian Guard, which was composed of skilled Viking warriors, serving as the emperor's personal bodyguards. Harald participated in various military campaigns, and his reputation as fierce warrior grew, and he became known as one of the most formidable commanders in the Varangian Guard. After the Battle of Stiklestad, Norway faced a period of instability and power struggle. His opponents took control of different regions in Norway. In Harald's absence, the Norwegian chieftains placed Magnus the Good on the throne of Norway, an illegitimate son of Olaf II. Harald left the Varangian Guard, and returned to Norway. He set his sights on becoming the king, and reclaiming his rightful place. After the death of Harthacnut, the Danish throne has passed on to Magnus, and he managed to defeat the Danish contender Svein Estridsson. Having heard of Svein's defeat by Magnus, Harald met him in Sweden, and with Swedish King Anund Jacob, three joined forces against Magnus the Good. Learning about their actions, Magnus gathered the entire army. Instead of going to war, Magnus' advisors recommend not to fight with Harald, so Magnus made Harald the co-king of Norway. After Harald became co-king of Norway with Magnus, their rule faced challenges. There were power struggles and conflicts within the kingdom. Eventually Magnus passed away, leaving Harald as the sole ruler of Norway, and Magnus' rival Svein Estridsson became the king of Denmark. When Svein gained the throne of Denmark, Harald believed that he should have inherited the throne. So he began making a series of raids on Denmark. Having failed to achieve his ambition through the raids, Harald decided to mount a naval attack on Denmark. He eventually set out with a great army, and a fleet of around 300 ships. The battle resulted in great bloodshed, as Harald defeated the Danes, but many ships and men managed to escape, including Svein, who jumped off his ship and swam to safety. The battle eventually led Harald to seek peace with Svein, as they agreed to have boundaries between the both kingdoms. Victory in the Battle of Nyssa solidified Harald's position as the sole ruler of Norway, and helped him establish his authority over the kingdom. After the battle, Harald accepted the fact that he could not conquer the Denmark, so he turned his attention to England, because he believed he had a legitimate claim to the English throne. Harald traced his lineage back to King Canute the Great, who had ruled over the England and Norway. He argued that he was the rightful heir to the throne through his ancestry. When Edward the Confessor died childless, he was succeeded by Harald Godwinson to the English throne, which angered Harald. Harald allied himself with the brother of the English king, Tostig Godwinson, who sought refuge with Harald after being exiled from England. They formed an alliance, and planned to invade England together. By September, their preparations were completed, and set sailed for England. Both armies met at Fulford just outside of York, and Harald leading a Viking army faced off against the English forces, led by Earls Morcar and Edwin. Despite facing a larger English army, Harald's Viking forces emerged victorious, securing a decisive win. However, his victory would be short-lived, as he would soon face another formidable opponent in the Battle of Stamford Bridge. After the Battle of Fulford, Harald and Tostig marched southward with their army, aiming to seize control of England. King Harald, upon learning of the invasion, quickly gathered his troops and marched to confront Harald. The battle took place near the village of Stamford Bridge. The battle was fierce and intense, but ultimately King Harald's forces emerged victorious. But unfortunately, Harald was struck by an arrow and fatally wounded. Death of Harald marked the end of Viking Age. Harald's defeat weakened Norse power in England, contributing to the overall decline of Viking influence in the region. Just a few weeks after Harald's death, William the Conqueror successfully invaded England, and killed the Harald Godwinson, forever changing the political landscape and bringing an end to the Anglo-Saxon era. Harald Hardrada's legacy as Viking king and warrior continues to capture the imagination of many today, and warrior spirit made him a legendary figure in Norwegian history.